Hello, everybody, and a happy Monday to you out there in Penguins land. This is the Post-Gazette Penguin Show presented by FanDuel. I'm Jason Mackey, and King Jemison is right next to me. Welcome back, King. You had a fun weekend in Baltimore covering the Army-Navy game. How was that, first off?
It was a lot more fun than Penguins land, that's for sure. One of the most unbelievable experiences, honestly, of my sports journalism life. A game that anybody who loves college football should go see because it's so unique. And, you know, I had a fantastic vantage point for the game-winning touchdown from Mount Lebanon's own Eli Heidenreich. And, you know, the president walked right next to me a few times. Just the kind of environment you don't get anywhere else. But you know, following the Penguins from afar was an interesting experience this weekend, and I'm sure it was even more interesting to be inside the building and inside the locker room.
Yeah, so I had King watch parts of the games. He watched the first two periods on Saturday and Sunday. So he was telling me how exciting they looked and how good they looked. So, no, I'm just kidding. But King watched the games back on DVR. Oh boy, there's a lot to get to. We have a lot we want to break down about these losses. I'm honestly at kind of a loss for words, what we saw against the Sharks and the Mammoth, and we'll get into all of that. What happened, who you blame, how do you fix this? I want to talk a little bit about the Tristan Jarry trade. Obviously, that's going to be an important part of the week that was. I don't know if it is involved in these losses or not. But first, we usually start with some FanDuel odds here. Let's get to those. The odds to make the playoffs for the Penguins, plus 300. That's the 10th lowest in the NHL. Right now, they're right below the Bruins at plus 230 and above the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets are at plus 370. So if you want to look at that, sportsbook.fanduel.com. All right, I was at the games. King watched all of them, just joking about only watching portions of it. A train wreck, King. What happened? What happened?
I think you can only look at it as the Penguins are deeply in their own heads as soon as they take a lead. I was following the score of Sunday's game, and I saw that they were up 3-0 entering the third period. Also noticed that the shot statistic was heavily favoring the Mammoth, so knew that there was already some warning signs there. But I really just thought about the quote, "These are the times that try men's souls." Having a 3-goal lead in the third period, like that shouldn't be the biggest area of struggle for any hockey team, but it has been. You just knew that if the Mammoth were able to get one goal early, it was going to be incredibly difficult for the Penguins to keep this game from going to overtime, from avoiding another collapse, and they couldn't because right away the Mammoth score within about 90 seconds they're able to get 2 goals that really put the pressure back on Pittsburgh. This team is just really, really bad at protecting leads, and I don't have a great explanation for it other than the fact that a team that has really controlled possession for most of the games, and if you had me just watching the first 2 periods of every game this season, I would think that the Penguins were one of the best teams in the NHL, particularly in terms of generating chances and keeping the puck in their opponent's zone. But for whatever reason, when they have a lead, they completely lose that ability. And I mean, the Mammoths and the Sharks this weekend, and both of these blown leads for the Penguins, both at PPG Paints Arena, they absolutely dominated those third periods, not just in terms of the scoreboard, but in terms of how play was progressing. The Penguins simply could never get a shift together that really halted that momentum. And I don't really know what the answer to that is. But Jason, if you were Dan Muse, what would you be thinking?
How far did I get myself into this mess? No, I think it's a mentality, King. I don't think it's a Dan Muse. He can help to a degree. I don't think he's doing anything terribly wrong. I mean, obviously he's the coach of the team and he should answer for that and be blamed for it. But I mean, I agree with what you're saying that they looked scared. They looked timid. Being in that dressing room yesterday, boy, was it alarming to hear Erik Karlsson talk about how they're lacking confidence, or he didn't say they were fragile, but basically said they were fragile. Like, you hear comments like that said by a hockey player, it ain't great. I'm going to go back to Karlsson's comments here because I want to make sure I don't think we were worried too much about the outcome. We were just playing hockey, staying in the moment. That was him talking about what they did earlier this season. We can't be too afraid of what's going to happen in the future and the what ifs. We have to stay more in the moment. Like, you're basically admitting that you're not staying in the moment and that you're worried about the what ifs and sort of freaking out. Anyway, they play one way for 2 periods and then they get a lead. And then all of a sudden it's, oh no, it's going to happen again. What if it happens again? Am I going to be the one that makes the mistake? Does that mean I'm going to get benched? Is this whole season going to go in the toilet? What's going to happen? You just start thinking about everything other than closing out on a shooter or playing aggressive, playing on your toes. And it's maddening, man. I don't understand it.
And obviously the fans inside PPG Paints Arena could not understand it either. And I heard a lot of booing coming through on the broadcast in the third period of that Mammoth game. And it's really hard to blame fans because this is a team that the way they've played, and honestly, some of the fortune that they've gotten throughout the season, they should be safely in a playoff spot right now. They should be really progressing towards a chance to give Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang another shot at the postseason. And who knows what they can do once they get there. Instead, they are throwing it away in the absolutely most inexplicable ways. And, those comments from Carlson kind of remind me of the comments Brian Russ made earlier in the week about shootouts, when that was really the story because they'd fallen to 0-5 in shootouts with the loss to the Ducks on Tuesday. He basically said that they were struggling with confidence, and that if they were struggling with confidence, it was really hard for them to try new things, to be aggressive, to really show what they can do in shootouts. And, it's kind of hard to blame a team that struggled so much in any area of the game, whether it be closing it out or in shootouts, to have confidence, but somehow you have to generate it without, just having the games go differently. And it is concerning to hear that in these areas of the game that everybody knows that they're struggling, they're even willing to admit that they are feeling it in that dressing room and that it is a serious confidence issue that probably not going to turn around until they don't just see one go their way, but really start to see a string of different results.
Yeah. I mean, that was something Sidney Crosby said yesterday, that we just have to get a lead and close out a game and see that we can do it. And he's not wrong. I mein, yes, they do. They have to do that a lot of times over. I just question whether even doing it once is going to cure the issue. And a lot of, I guess, for maybe novice hockey fans who might not understand kind of what we're talking about, like the actual plays. If you go back and watch, and maybe I wouldn't recommend doing this unless you're really sick in the head, but if you go back and watch the Sharks goals, too many times in front of the net, Alexander Wenberg was the biggest offender of this, just standing there. Nobody's pushing him around. There's either a lack of awareness or a lack of toughness, or this is what we talk about and say pushback. If you want, and again, I'm generalizing a little bit, but some of the shots that the Mammoth were afforded, whether it's a one-timer, a rebound look, or whatever, like the Penguins are not closing out on shooters. They're not, they're affording way too much time and space. And you see a team play aggressively with urgency, really not allowing anything. And it's basically the 180-degree opposite of what we saw in these 2 games. King, with how young this team is, with what they're already admitting, psyche-wise, I just worry about the cost here, and not just, a couple points. I mean, obviously that's adding up, and you did the story from the point, the number of points that they've left on the table, and that's a problem. I just worry about this being a flashpoint or a gateway to something much worse in this season. Like, it just feels that the confidence they exuded during that 8-2-2 start is so far from where we're at right now.
Yeah, and I did want to bring up one thing on the toughness point. And I think Penguins fans are not going to be surprised at this stat, but Pittsburgh has the fewest hits credited of any team in the National Hockey League this season. That doesn't necessarily have to do anything with traffic in front of the net, but it does have something to do with the defensive intensity they're playing with. I think we've known all along that probably the biggest weakness for the Penguins was going to be their defense in terms of outside of their goaltending, which has turned into, an issue recently, but has been more of a strength than not throughout the season. It looked like they were going to have trouble really keeping opposing offenses from getting exactly what they wanted. And, I think we're seeing that show up both statistically and in terms of how these plays are progressing. And I absolutely agree with you that this is an inflection point on the season, that they've lost 5 in a row, getting points in 4 of them, But when you look at the way that they've lost these games, blowing a late lead against Dallas, the most inexplicable tying goal given up ever against Anaheim, and then these two 4-goal lead blown in the third period on Saturday, 3-goal lead blown in the third period on Sunday. They have Edmonton coming to town on Tuesday. It feels like as close to a must-win as it can be against a team that's been in the last 2 Stanley Cup finals as you could possibly have, because they have to see some momentum go their way, or I do think this season could spiral into what we thought it would be all along.
By the way, I'm glad you brought up the Ducks loss. I'm so focused on this weekend. Got to pour one out for you, buddy. You're filling in for me. I'm at the winter meetings. That was your first hockey game story, correct?
Yeah, my first instant recap.
Oh my goodness, that was a brutal one.
Yeah,
they don't get much worse than that. I'll give you that.
I don't want to know what the look on my face looked like. I'm guessing I went white as a sheet when that tying goal went through. I think whatever made it on the website right after the finish of the game was, at least it was readable according to some people, and then hopefully the right through made it make more sense.
You did well, man. You did well. I read it, and you handled yourself, and you lived to tell the tale. We all have them. I had one. My the Sharks game story. I started they're up 4 goals. I don't need to write, at least my process. I'll write neutral play-by-play, and then I'll top it with the win. I'll top it with the loss. I'm 4 goals. I don't really need to get too far into it. I think I'm pretty good here. Nope. The reporters get burned too. So we've all had a week. All right. I want to stop talking about what has happened in the past, and I want to talk about what's going to happen in the future. Starting Tuesday, Tristan Jarry in town. That's going to be a fun one. But the Penguins should be getting some guys back, or getting some guys with them. The first time, I should say, Stuart, Skinner, Brett Kulak. Let's talk a little bit when we get back after the world's shortest break about how the Penguins can dig out of this. What are some reliable solutions? How do these guys fit in the lineup? We'll do that after a fun 7-second transition. All right, welcome back to the Post-Gazette Penguins show presented by FanDuel. Jason Mackey, King Jemison here with you on a snowy Monday. Let's dig out. Stuart Skinner needs to play. He needs to play a lot, and he needs to play well. I don't think there's another option, King. And I don't know if that's going to do it. I think a lot of their issues, they can be covered up by goaltending. I think they're not going to fix the root of the issue. The root of the issue is what we're talking about. But I think they need to hope Stuart Skinner comes in here and just plays out of his mind. And I'm not in any hurry to see Artur Shilov's. Again, I'm going to give Stuart Skinner the runway. They made the move, and I understand why they did it. I want to see a lot of him, and I need to see him play well. What do you think?
You're absolutely right. But another thing, just, the sidebar to that is Sergei Murashov has been fantastic in the American Hockey League. Leads in goals against average, save percentage. Of course, when the Tristan Jarry trade happened, everybody's eyes turned to the 21-year-old Russian. It's his time in goal. I think Sunday's game proved why he still needs more time and why you don't want to throw him into the situation that Pittsburgh is in right now. He played really well through 2 periods. He was under fire, made some incredibly athletic saves, but then he became the latest victim of the Penguins' third period collapse. And you do not want a guy who you view as the future of your organization between the pipes to lose his confidence because he's playing in a disadvantageous situation. And also, I think he's still got a long way to go as an NHL goaltender. Some of those third period goals and the overtime goal, they were saves I would expect him to make in most situations. And I think you probably did see some of the cumulative effect of the pressure that he was under throughout the game and in that third period have an effect. But on Stuart Skinner, it's absolutely his time in net. Artur Shilov's was not terrible in Tuesday's game against Anaheim. Obviously, he gave up the tying goal. He was pretty good for most of the game against the Sharks, but he was a serious problem in the third period, it looked like to me. And you need a steady veteran presence to get in there and just provide some confidence to the guys in front of them.
Yeah, and they're lacking that a lot. I think the goaltenders are lacking that. Going back as you're talking, King, Artur Shilov's in his past 10 starts, I want to say he has 1 win. I'm going to grab the numbers real quick. My internet does not seem to want to cooperate. Here we go. Yeah, 1-3-6 in his past 10, an 879 save percentage. I mean, you can't have that. No. You can't have that. Like, we've talked about this on the pod before. If you look at their numbers, and good on Matt Venzel for retweeting this and collecting the checks. Did you see this? He tweeted out the Sport Logic thing saying, "Oh, I told you so," which, hey, credit to Matt. He's right. Yep. But their underlying numbers, they're not that much different from last year. They're not particularly good. They've basically had the goaltending. Now they're not having the goaltending, and things are going poorly. So basically, I say all that to say I can't stick with a goaltender who's not performing well. If you have another option, I want to explore it. I don't know if it's going to be any good, but you traded for the guy. He's done a lot more than the goalies you have on your current roster. Give him a chance. I don't see why you wouldn't.
Yeah, I think as soon as he is available, as soon as these immigration issues clear up, he is going to be between the pipes, I would expect. And, Mershaw's going to have to go back down to Wilkes-Barre, and he's going to have to continue dominating for the Baby Pins. But I think there's a chance that, if Shilovs continues to put up performances like this, like, could he be waived and could Mershaw become the everyday backup? He certainly looks like a better option than Artur's at this point. But we forget that early in the season, Shilovs was looking incredible. I think sometimes his save numbers looked better than he actually played because he was creating a lot of chances by giving up rebounds. And, we've seen he is a very aggressive goaltender, if I can put it like that. Like he makes things look not easy. He's jumping around a lot in the crease. Sometimes I would describe it as flailing. I think that's been a big problem with shootouts. So he makes spectacular saves, but just as often is giving up some pretty easy chances.
He makes things look not easy. I like that. You're supposed to make things look easy. I don't want you to make them look not easy.
Yeah. So, and that's where Murashov, I think, has always impressed me with his calmness and his just he doesn't waste motion. And when he moves really fast. But to be 21 and playing in the NHL and to have the steady presence of mind that he appears to have is great. But then you see that third period when he's absolutely under siege and he starts to lose some of that calmness. And that's where you just worry about him if he continues to be thrown out there, that the guy that we've seen won't develop into the player we know he can be.
All right. Number 2 on my list, King, is the defense pairs. Parker Wotherspoon, Erik Karlsson, I'm going to stick with. I'm intrigued by this. I don't know if this is what Dan Muse is going to do. I'd like to see him bust up Ryan Shea and Chris Letang. I know they've been together for most of this season. I don't know if they've noticed, but things ain't going terribly well right now. Brett Kulak has played with talented players before. Things have not gone terribly well with Chris Letang. I think Ryan Shea in a third pairing role is going to help a lot. And if it's Ryan Shea and Ryan Graves, I can live with that. I think that puts Shea, he's going to be playing against different lines than he would be in a second pairing role. If Kulak and Letang work, that pairing is going to be more productive. We'll see what Dan Muse does. They're off today. They practice, or they have a morning skate tomorrow. But that's just something else I'm circling on my list that I want to see some pairing adjustments. I think you need to see some lineup adjustments in general. But to me, that's an easy one.
Yeah, I think obviously the defensive pairs could use a shakeup because, I think you saw some shakeup work for the lines in the Sharks and Mammoth games. Like,
right.
The lines changed with Ricard Raquel coming back in, and I absolutely love the McGroarty, Kindle, Brazeau line. I think that makes a ton of sense. And I think you see why the kid line was getting all these chances and not producing is they didn't have that presence in front of the net who could tip in goals, who could occupy defenders, who could create traffic in front of the goaltender. And that's what Brazeau has added to the incredible forechecking ability and the speed and the passing that we've seen from McGroarty and Kindle. And I think that's helped down the line as well. Like the fourth line still looking pretty good with Kevin Hayes at the center. It's not the same as it was with Lizotte, but that's a better position for him than second line center. I think the same thing needs to happen with those defensive pairs. Obviously, Chris Letang is going to be a part of your defensive lineup. And he's just going to have to play better. But as you pointed out in a podcast that never saw the light of the day because it happened about 90 minutes before the Tristan Jarry trade, the underlying numbers for Letang are not necessarily as bad as some of the loud mistakes that he has made. He still generates a ton of offensive chances, and that's just what you're going to have to live with the way he plays.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to bench him. You're not going to bench Chris Letang. I've even had that thrown at me via email. I mean, he's right up there with Crosby and Malkin. Like this could be their last, probably is the last run. Like, you're going to let him ride it out, but you need to insulate him sort of against himself at this point. And I almost admire it. Like the way Chris Letang plays the game. It's like he's unaware that things have changed, that you can't make the same plays that you used to. You can't operate the same way that you used to. I mean, I say that in one breath, and then we're also talking about their failure to hold third period leads. Part of that is sort of a failure to self-identify, in my opinion, to be aware of like scoring situation and say like, maybe this is not the right time. Maybe we just kind of dial it back. But anyway, a long way of agreeing with you, King, and agreeing with myself too, that you have to change something, right? Like, I mean, I got on the beat, mid-November, something like that. And I can't think of anything close to this season, in terms of negativity, skepticism, concern about what things are happening. I mean, it's not particularly close. They were really good at the start of the season. I just don't know how you can continue going this way without making changes. And I don't know what other changes you'd make, frankly, like Ricard, Raquel, Crosby, Russ. Sorry, I'm monopolizing the talking point here. We talked about the second line, like maybe you'd tweak on the fourth, but I mean, there are only so many things you can do.
Yeah. And I'm not to say that fourth line has been great, but I'm just saying that I think the Hayes being the fourth line center makes a lot more sense than the second line center. And I think Kendall being on the second line with McGroarty, particularly now that they have Brazeau there, that makes a lot of sense because the advanced stats would tell you that the best lines for the Penguins in terms of expected goals against this season have all included Ben Kendall, that he is doing awesome things. I love his defensive presence as a young player. I think he plays with such intensity and finds a way to win puck battles despite his size, finds a way to really put pressure on guys. And that's why he's somebody I would absolutely have out there a lot in 3-on-3 overtime because he can give you offense and defense, though he did have a turnover that led to the Mammoth win, the Mammoth winning goal on Sunday. But just one stat that I think has to be highlighted. This is from Adam Gretz on Twitter. When leading by 3 goals or more after 2 periods this season, the Penguins are 2-1-2, have a losing record, and the rest of the NHL is 73-0. When that is the case, many things have to change, but obviously it starts with the mentality.
Wait, go back. Say that one again.
That when leading by 3 goals or more after 2 periods this season, the Penguins are 2-1-2, and the rest of the NHL is 73-0.
My goodness gracious. Yeah, some of the history here is nuts. It's absolutely nuts. By the way, and credit to Gretz. He's a great follow on Twitter at @Gretz. At Bob Grove 91 is also one of my favorites too. Bob Grove, Penguins team historian, does a ton. But Sunday marked the first time in Penguins history they lost consecutive games in which they had a lead of 3+ goals. The history is just wild, man. I don't even know what to say. Just throw my hands up. It's a lot.
It is a lot. And one thing just to note, like Saturday and Sunday had similar collapses, but were very different games. The Penguins controlled play against the Sharks and then completely lost everything. I think having the 5-on-3 power play against and the Sharks being able to get that first goal to cut in the leader, their second goal of the game, but the first one in the third period completely flipped the momentum. In the Mammoth game, the Penguins deserved to lose. They were dominating the shots department. They were dominating the possession department and had gotten very lucky to get, I think, 3 goals in their first 8 shots. They were not necessarily carrying play at any point of that game, and it came back to bite them in the third period. But regardless, you have a 3-goal lead, whether it's because of luck or solid play, you have to hold it.
No doubt. All right, that does it for us this week. Thanks so much, King. We will have Oilers game on Tuesday. and we'll figure out a time to pod maybe late that night. I fly to Ottawa on Wednesday. King will have practice. We'll get something for you. Have to discuss it. Team is very interesting, even if it's a little crazy right now. Make sure you like and subscribe. You can get all of this content, so much more from our Post-Gazette North Shore Drive podcast and YouTube channels. For King Jemison, I'm Jason Mackey. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.